for joining me today on Step Into Your Life. This is Julianne Williams. And the guest I have today is going to teach us a lot about how we can change our life. Her name is Claire Unkefer, and she is an empowering and dynamic speaker, but she's got a very unique blend of her expertise. And that is she's got a background in clinical nursing, energy therapy, and life and transformational coaching. But really, what she does is she helps people break through from their past trauma, their self limiting beliefs, and the longstanding issues around mental health. And as all of you know, mental health is one of those things I am so passionate about getting the conversation out there normalized so that people get the proper treatment and help. So Claire is going to talk with us about how you can overcome a journey with depression and anxiety and a whole bunch of other things. So I'm really excited to bring Claire onto the show. Here we go. Welcome, Claire.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's nice to be here.
Well, I am so glad that our paths crossed because my passion is your passion. But you have a very unique way of looking at some of these things. So first, I want to start just so that I introduced you, but just a little bit about you, and then let's talk about some of these really important topics.
Okay. Oh, you want me to tell you about me?
Yes, you talk for just a sec. Let's just tell everybody who we are.
Yes. So I live in Virginia Beach, Virginia, and we were both talking. Julianne is in California. I'm in Virginia. We're both at the coast, so we're enjoying that today. But I came to where I am because I struggled with what they called treatment-resistant depression and anxiety for years. And I did all the things that I was supposed to do and that the practitioners and doctors told me to do, but I just wasn't getting the relief that I was hoping for. It would surface from time to time, and I was just generally unhappy. And the funny thing about my depression was everything looked good from the outside, but I called it like this silent scream. And there was this inner crying, and I was desperate for someone to help me, to heal me, to make me feel better, but nobody could ever really get me to that place. So I started believing that something was just inherently wrong with me, that I was faulty. I needed to go back to the manufacturer.
That's not true. You're not broken.
Yeah. And then what happened was I discovered subconscious work. And it was a light bulb moment because I realized in that moment why I had never really gotten there. It's because the answers that I needed were in a different hidden compartment in my brain. I didn't have access to it. So I couldn't sit across from those brilliant, educated therapists, compassionate therapists who wanted to help me. We weren't talking about the right issues because I didn't have access to what was really wrong and causing my symptoms of depression and anxiety. And so I just am so passionate about that concept. It's not scary. It's natural. It's a part of it's using our intuition. And I teach people how to access their subconscious minds and get these answers. And I started working with people struggling with the same kind of stress, overwhelm, fatigue, depression, anxiety. And I started noticing patterns in personalities and habits and kind of ways of habits of thought and ways of being. And I had found them in myself, but I was like, oh, there seems to be some themes here. And so I clustered those themes and came up with kind of like a step-by-step natural holistic approach to healing your trauma, addressing unprocessed past emotions and instances, and freeing yourself from the beliefs you have about yourself or the world around you that you came to just to survive. And it really is like unlocking the prison door yourself. It's very empowering, and it's a process that's beautiful. So I love doing it. I just love it. I feel lucky that I get to do it.
So interesting. So what you talked about was sort of that root cause that's behind the depression and the anxiety, and the fact that so we have those sort of two levels in our mind, which is our conscious and our subconscious. I think that when people hear about subconscious, they think there's some weird programming or work that you have to do.
Uh,
So
um, no, I
how,
mean, I'm a
mhm,
hypnotherapist. I have 3
yeah,
hypnotherapy certifications, but I don't hypnotize people anymore because you don't have to.
okay.
Yeah, you don't
So
have to.
share with me, like, okay, so you're talking about the root cause. So you
Mm,
said you did see the themes about people not really understanding. What are some of the root causes that cause some of this depression, anxiety? Because what I have noticed through my work as a grief educator is the work I'm doing with especially younger adults and teenagers, that the amount of depression and anxiety that they are
mm,
feeling is actually beyond overwhelming. It is paralyzing.
yeah.
There is some reason behind that because
Mhm.
I don't have the expertise that you do. I sort of work more on that surface
Yeah.
level, I suppose. However, I want to learn more about what are some of the things that are in the back of our mind that keep us from being able to
Mm.
process this, and then experience these symptoms that are just, they're real. So I want people to understand it's real,
Yeah,
and
it is
but it
real.
just really can derail your entire life.
Yeah, the symptoms make you miserable. Well, that's kind of a two-part question. I'll address first, like, what do I think is going on right now in our society, especially with our youth? I have 3 teenagers, so I'm right there in it
Mhm.
with you, and I see it in our, in the people I work with, in our society, our cultural norms. And in my opinion, I think the biggest problem and the reason we're seeing such a prevalence is this, we're normalizing bypassing our feelings,
Oh.
bypassing, we don't feel it, like we bypass the uncomfortable, ugly stuff.
Oh.
That's what social media is. This is the beautiful me, but then there's like all this ugly stuff that's going on in my life in the background. Well, our bodies and our minds are like that too. We wear these masks, and um, you said you do. I have an 18-year-old son, and the other day he was angry at one of his friends that's a girl, and I tried to show him. I said, "Buddy," and he was like kind of attacking her in his talking to me about it. And I said, "Honey, you're hurt. You're hurt. You got rejected. You're
Mhm.
hurt." And instead of feeling that hurt, you're angry. And that's okay. That's okay. But I just want to let you know that's where the pain is. And he's like, "Mom, I know you do this for a living, but don't do that to me."
Well, you know what's interesting though, is when I am talking to the people that I work with, or when I'm doing education on grief, the one thing I say always is you cannot heal until you release. But
Right.
the thing is you can't release it until you feel, but feeling does hurt,
We're
whatever it is.
and we're afraid of it. But
Yeah.
once it's kind of like, if any women are listening and have had babies, it's kind of like birthing a baby. You have to go through the birthing process of birthing that baby. But then once the baby is out of you, you have this beautiful baby, your baby. And so it's like the prize. So why do we do this work? We do it. We feel the feeling. We briefly revisit it, briefly refeel it with support, and fully process it so that we birth it and let it go. And our baby is the freedom and the lightness. And so that's why we do it. Otherwise, and I get it. Um, I get it that it's hard, but I think that's why are afraid to look at the ugly truth, afraid to know the ugly answers there because they're unflattering. And then the major cause of depression and anxiety and depression are not bad. not bad.
Mhm.
They are the indicators of what needs to be healed, and so once you can identify, why am I feeling this way, what is really going on, and you can peel back the layers and get to it, it's almost always something about, I'm not good enough. No matter how hard I'll never be good enough. I'm not inherently lovable. The me that is me is not acceptable. I don't matter. I'm insignificant. Everybody has 1 to 3 of these dominant
Well, I
beliefs
mean,
that
all
they
of those statements
formed.
just make my heart hurt, just to think
Yeah.
that so many people walk around feeling that they're not lovable and that no matter what they do, it's never good enough. That's a pretty heavy load to carry in your mind and in your
Right.
body.
But let me tell you, like, I'll give you an example of subconscious work and how it's not scary. What we do is
Okay.
we instruct your mind. And just like a relax, like, take a breath, close your eyes. You don't have to close your eyes, whatever. I'm really not a rule follower, so I don't like give people a lot of rules. But but I use language to get your mind to have a memory drop in that is the root cause of your issue. So once you have absolutely kind of gotten specific about, well, I think it's anger. No, it's not. It's not anger. It's rage. It's rage I'm feeling. Okay, okay, rage. And I can get your mind to drop in the original wounding of that rage. Okay. And it will just be like, oh, a memory popped up, kind of like, oh, yeah, last Tuesday, I remember when we went to Domino's, and you're like reliving getting out of the car and walking into the shop.
Mhm.
A scene will come to mind. Oh, I don't know why I just thought of that, but I'm remembering being outside in my driveway playing a game of hopscotch, and I see the house, and my mom and dad they're having an argument on the porch. And I don't know if this really well, I think it did. I did it happen, but it doesn't matter. Your mind is showing you a beautiful picture. It's playing charades. Anything that pops in your mind is relevant. I had a client once say, I don't know why I keep seeing the yellow blanket in my mind from my childhood. And I was like, oh, yellow blanket. And it was completely significant. It all tied
Mm.
together beautifully. Your mind does this beautifully artistic storytelling for you to say, hey, Julianne, this is what's going on. You're reliving these feelings. And in this moment, I'm just going to give you an example.
Mhm.
When you were in the driveway and your parents were arguing, in that moment, you decided, because you're able to it's really strange when you're working in the subconscious world, you're able to become aware of that 10-year-old versions of you thoughts. I thought, I something must be wrong with me because I took all their unhappiness on as my own, right? Something must be wrong with me if if I was fun enough or good enough or enough, then they
Mhm.
wouldn't be sitting there arguing. They'd be too happy to be doing that. And I and that was a belief, actually, that was one of the scenes I did go to. I was much younger. And that is the conclusion that I came to, and was the absolute source of my depression, was that clearly I wasn't good enough for anyone to be happy, even myself, that I wasn't good enough to be loved or cherished, all those. And so you can imagine, but I grew up seemingly fine.
Mhm. Yeah.
But those conclusions I came to colored my world. And I wasn't aware how they were affecting my relationships and the job opportunities I would or would not go after, and the decisions I would make in my life out of fear, or because I didn't deserve it and I didn't really have true self love. And so, what it's really funny, you can think as an adult, the beautiful healing that happens is you see it through your adult eyes. And there's other lots of tools and tricks you use while you're there, but you see it through your adult eyes and goes, well, that's not the truth. The truth is they were unhappy and didn't know how to communicate. I'm just
Mhm.
this beautiful 10-year-old playing in the driveway with my ball.
Right.
I was innocent. and I was kind of like the collateral damage for their unhappiness. And that makes me sad. And then that takes us down another little rabbit hole. And we trace it back all the way to the root cause and until you realize something different. And so then you walk out of this work going, oh my God, I believed a lie that I didn't know I even believed for 45 years, and now I get it. I see it. I can see clearly now. And it's really is this expansive high that you get on right after you release those and kind of uncover. Once you uncover work, it's kind of like detective work.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, so that's the belief portion. And then processing the emotions, I have a different process that I use to find them, to locate them, find them. Like grief, you
Mhm.
talked about grief. I had somebody come see me for weight loss, and he had been working out at a gym every day. He had hired a nutritional coach. He was on a meal plan. He was doing all the things he should be doing, right? And I can't wait to hear what you think about this. He was doing all the things that he was doing, like it should have worked. Like it's math, right? Calories in,
Mhm.
calories out. Why isn't this working for me? Nothing's happening. So, and I always know when someone goes to see me for weight loss, we're not talking about weight. But we're detectives, and my job is to find the source. And what he came to, the memory that popped up in his mind was the time after his father's passing 9 years prior or 8 years prior, whatever it was. And it was a very slow death, in the
Mhm.
hospital, very complicated family relationships. And he was the oldest sibling. So a lot of the pressure was put on him.
Mhm.
And he realized that he never got to cry or feel the
Mhm.
feelings or grieve his
Mhm.
dad or say
Mhm.
goodbye. He was too busy bypassing that to
Yes.
make decisions and be strong and clean out the house and make arrangements and deal with the finances. He never felt it. And
Yes.
so this incredible man who I was actually surprised came to see me because he was like, like a police officer type, very serious. I was like, oh boy, this
It doesn't matter what we look like on the outside, it's
no,
all the same
but
inside,
sometimes
you know?
sometimes people can have like turtle shells in their
Mhm.
energy fields, and it's harder work for
True.
us
You're true.
to get
Yeah.
through to them. And so that's what I was talking about. I was like, okay, I'm gonna work today. And he cried and released it and grieved and let it all go until all the energy of grief was out of his body and out of his nervous system. And I just hold space while that happens. And they let me know when it's all done. There's like this like feeling of like when you pour out a cup and then the water is all out of the cup, you go, okay, it's done. That's the feeling that comes over you. And he's like, okay, it's done. And he felt better. So that's great, right? He felt better. He processed something huge. But a month later, he contacted me and had lost 9 pounds.
You
So
know,
I want to know what you think about that and grief as real density in the body.
I think, grief, having struggled myself with a lot of loss, I definitely know that it affects your body in so many ways. I can use a personal, story about that, which is after my husband took his life, I would needed to have surgery, and, when it got to the wire and they started doing all the blood work, they found out that I had a blood disorder.
Oh boy.
And interestingly enough, all of my labs were normal until the year that my husband died. They took it all the way to Harvard Medical School. They were still unable to find out because there was nothing wrong with me.
Right. Right.
So I can identify with that in a different way, that I do believe that our bodies are so affected by the stress and the emotions that are sitting there. And I tell people, like you talked about the cup being emptied. no matter what, at some point, you will stop crying.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like you will, and so you kinda don't wanna stop because it's like, if I start, I may never stop,
Yeah,
or
you're
whatever.
afraid to open the box, right?
That's right, exactly. You're afraid to open the box, but 100% of the time, the emotion does come out of the cup, and the cup is empty.
And then you feel lighter. Yeah, Brene Brown had a great I heard her say something once where she said, people are so afraid of opening Pandora's box.
Mhm,
But then I asked them, were you under the impression you were living outside of the box? The
mhm, that's
reason
good.
you're opening the box is to free yourself from the
Mhm,
prison and weight of grief.
yes.
Yeah. So if you
Wow.
can just tell yourself that, and it might suck for a moment, but I'm going to be with someone that's going to support me through it. And then I'm going to walk out of here feeling lighter, feeling better, and processing a huge emotion instead of carrying it around. People release emotions that they've been carrying around and holding in their bodies for years
Yes.
and years and decades and days and weeks,
Yeah, whatever it is.
Yeah, and it's a skill. It's a skill that we can learn. Why didn't we learn it in school? It's one of the most important life skills because life happens. I've healed my stuff, but my life isn't all hearts, unicorns, rainbows, and flowers. Stuff happens, but I know what to do about it. My stress is my indicator. When I'm stressed, I'm like, what's going on? There's a
Right,
disturbance in the
right,
force. Am I
right.
angry? Am I sad? Why? What happened to make me feel this way? And then I take myself through the process and I feel untangled instead of just barreling through my week,
Well, and to
going
your
off.
point, when I talk about grief, I do say, no matter what, you will experience grief. You
Mhm.
will, because grief comes from so many areas that in our life,
Mhm.
whether it be losing a person that we love,
Yep.
whether it be losing a job we love, whether it be that something didn't turn out the
Yeah,
way we
just a
planned right
disappointment.
away. Yeah,
Yeah.
that disappointment and that, but I will say 95% of everything in my life has not turned out the way I planned. Now, some of that is better, and then some of that is stuff that I have really had to do some work on. And the biggest mistake that I made when I look back after losing my husband is my children were 7 and 3.
Oh
And
my god.
yeah, and they were, and
My heart
watching
goes to
them
you.
grieve, oh, watching them grieve was worse than my sadness.
Right. I can
So
I
what
can
I ended
imagine.
up doing was delaying grieving for a lot of years.
Mhm.
And through that path, I mean, I probably could have made so many things so much better for myself by understanding that I had to heal too.
Mhm.
And so it's interesting as I learn more about how we just delay dealing with issues,
Mhm.
the amount of life we lose. And I'm sorry I
Yeah.
lost some parts of my life but I made the best decision I could at the time. I
Mhm.
did the best I could. However, if I could give anybody some sort of hot tips on
Yeah.
grief and whatnot, I would
Deal with
say,
it. Face the
yeah, yeah,
for your freedom.
and you do have to support people around you. Like, I had to support my children. They were little.
Mhm. Oh,
However, I
babies.
I did that at the detriment to myself because I didn't take my own grief as a priority.
Right. And it's an interesting word you just used. You said delayed. And what came to my mind was the process of like seasons, in our lives, and the process of things happening. Some bad things are supposed to happen. Like grief is
Mhm,
supposed to happen after loss or disappointment. Um, After a divorce, I went through a
mhm,
divorce. There is a period of time that for those people that have been divorced, they'll know what I'm talking about. That first year after divorce, you're a little nuts and you're processing the grief and the sadness and all that. But the interaction between the two of you is high conflict in that first period of time
Mhm.
sometimes.
Mhm.
And I've worked it with a few people that they've had high conflict divorce situations for years. And I straight
Yes, I
out
know
told
people
them,
like
this is a normal, natural process. You've just stayed in it 7 years too long. You were
yeah.
supposed to kind of move through that, move on with your life, concern yourself with your own life, return your both of you return your focus to your kids and their well-being and just be happy. But instead, you fixated on attacking the other one and taking them out of each other out of the knees. That there is a phase after divorce where that happens. It's a self-protective phase. But you guys just stay it's delayed. It's delayed.
Oh, no. It's true, and, I look back and I was like, "Wow, I wasn't even me for a period of time." I don't even
Yeah,
recognize myself because I was literally trying to get through every minute of every day, whatever it took. It didn't
right.
matter if it was healthy or
Right?
unhealthy. It was just, "How do I get through this moment?" So, I agree with you, but the problem is that it doesn't go away. We think that if we just make it through moment by moment,
It
it will go
doesn't.
away.
It
Yeah.
doesn't, and sometimes you're right. Sometimes we just have to do the best we can, and that's good enough, and
Yes.
but we do it with a lot of self-compassion and give ourselves a very wide bandwidth, right?
Yes.
This is my
Yes.
capacity at this time, and we don't beat ourselves up. And that's how we get through those moments, and then they end and we're back to, okay, whew, good. But how do you know you're in a delayed process? You know by how you feel. You know by how happy you feel in your life. If you're walking around going, wow, I feel great, and you have the sense of gratitude, and there's synchronicities, and there's so much love, and things happen, problems occur, but you know you're a good pivoter. You know a solution's coming, so you look for it and it comes. If that's you, you're great. But if you are stressed and overwhelmed and unhappy and don't know why, there is something else going on that if you look at it, if you turn around with your metaphorical sword and
Mhm.
say,
Mhm.
let's do this,
Mhm. Yeah.
you will win. You will win.
And isn't that a good feeling to know when you start the process that if you are willing to do the work and to fight the battle, the victory will be yours?
Yeah, it's if you do the work, that's what, I talk to a lot of potential clients and I get the question, does this work? And I'm like, well, a lot of things work. It works. Yes, it works if you do it.
Right. Right, whatever it is.
So
I mean,
whatever it is, it
consistency.
it works. Whatever it is, yes, it works. Unless the manufacturer is just a liar. It works if you
Mhm.
do it, if you apply it, if you do the work. And you know, I've asked myself the question a lot, like, why don't people want to do the work sometimes? I talk to unhappy people all the time. I talk to a woman who pulls out her eyebrows and her eyelashes
Mhm.
as a means to cope with her debilitating anxiety, but she opted not to do the work, has convinced herself she's fine, and just didn't want to go there, didn't want to open the box. Totally respect that. Totally
Mhm.
respect that.
Uh-huh.
That's cool. Um, I send you love and good luck. But why? Why don't we want to look at it? Because we're scared. We're scared of what we might know. We're scared of what we might uncover. We're scared. For me, not many people, I would say when people do transformational work, something changes in their life, but it's always
Mhm.
for the better for
Mhm.
everyone involved. Like a job,
Mhm.
if you hate your job and you're miserable there, somehow that job just doesn't align with you anymore and you find a different job. And if you can just keep telling yourself, I'm being led to something better, I'm being led to something better, you can get yourself there.
Agreed, and I think it is fear, of so many things. Fear of actually, having to acknowledge that your reality is different.
Then you want it
Fear,
to be. Yeah.
yes, and when it may not, it won't ever return to what it was, which was comfortable, when good or bad, right? It's we lean towards
Right.
keeping ourselves in these comfortable phases. It's fear over the pain that we're going to go through. It's fear over actually knowing that we actually might ourselves change, because I personally think that contemplating that there are things about you that might be different
Mhm.
is a super scary thought, because I only know me the way I am right now.
Right. And I tell people the truth. Not all relationships are going to survive the transformation you're going to undergo,
Right.
but they're going to be the ones that weren't supportive and didn't like, if you're going to change and be your best self and someone's not okay with that, it's kind of easy to let them go,
Right.
and not all relationships survive it. And people like the status quo. They
Yes.
do like the status quo. What if, and the biggest, I hear women kind of say it as a joke. They say, I'm afraid, like I don't want to leave my husband or anything. I'm miserable, but I don't want to leave him. Okay.
Mhm.
So what I'm hearing you say is you don't want to leave your husband. Great.
Mhm.
Like then
Yeah.
don't.
Well, and I think, to your point, when we do go for the patterns that we're used to in our life. So if you had a very chaotic growing up, you create a chaotic adulthood in many
Mhm,
cases. Not always, but I mean, those are the trends. Those are the sort of
mhm.
big picture things that happen. There are many people who don't, but we have to understand that that is something that is right there for us to grab onto. What That's the easiest grab right there, is what we're used to, as opposed to stretching our arm and pulling down something different. And so I really see, even myself, always have to contemplate a decision I'm making as to whether or not it is comfortable or correct
Yes.
for me.
Is this the right thing or that's right. I did tell my husband the other day, I said, with some things, projects I've got going on, I was like, I'm way outside of my comfort zone here. And he went, good, then you're exactly where you need to be. Because if you're comfortable, then you're not growing, and
Mhm.
then you're going to get stagnant. And so I was like, yeah, I know you're right. I just had to say it for a hot second.
Well, again, it's just acknowledging, because if you acknowledge that, then it doesn't become this big fear-based thought
Uh-huh.
that turns into this ruminating stuff in your mind and your body, and then it becomes a catastrophe.
Oh yeah, and that's the one of the things, communication and being able to communicate the ugly stuff so it doesn't stay in your body is so huge. And I'm really lucky. I'm on my second marriage. I met and married the love of my life before
Mhm.
I went through this transformation. And when I did, he came along with me, and he has grown and changed, and we both have come together and been able to communicate in ways that I never knew it was even possible. I can say, I'm starting to feel some resentment about this, and this, and I don't want to play that role of resentful wife. And so can we talk about this? And what I'm needing, I think, in it, what would make me feel better is this. Like, what are your thoughts? Well, that's not my intention at all. But yeah, if that's what you're needing, I can do that for you. That's kind
Mhm.
of the talk instead of the
Right,
argument or the
right,
simmering.
right.
And he knows when there's like any kind of conflict, it's like, okay, now we're going to have the uncomfortable conversation, but it's going to be okay, because at the end we're going to feel fine.
Well, I mean, it's just allowing yourself to be, you trust each other enough to be vulnerable, because vulnerability is hard.
Yeah, well, it's the premise, right? Like, if you love me and I love you, and we can both agree that I'm not trying to take you out and you're not trying to take me out, can we like also acknowledge we are literally being triggered right now? And that's
Yeah.
our work to figure out where those triggers are from, or why are you doing that? Like, why are you doing that? What's your
Mhm.
motive? I always assume positive intent. There's some good intention in there.
Yes.
But that's my work, afterwards, and his work afterwards, to go untangle that. But let's just put our triggers aside and deal with the situation at hand, and try to seek to understand each other and find a solution that works for both of us. Because
Mhm.
if one of you is not feeling great, then you're not quite there. So it's just a
Well,
way of communicating.
I agree, and before we wrap up, because we're running out of time, but you made me remember a thought that I have been talking to a couple of my clients about recently, and that is, it's not other people's job to think about what's going to activate our emotions. It's our job to know what does that, and that means that we need to work through it. So, for instance, for many years, I would see people on Facebook post happy anniversaries. We've been married 25 years, 20
No.
years. This year we got
Mhm.
married in 1990, so that was my dream. Or I would see the senior picture um, at the football game with the mom and the dad standing there. And of course, I didn't get that, and neither did my kiddo. And it would just activate this,
Yeah. Yeah.
emotion. And it was almost
Mhm.
like, how could they post that knowing I'm sitting here in pain? And then I did a lot of healing work. I realized that I need to celebrate with them. It's not their fault that my husband decided to take his life. Instead, I need to find a way to heal through that. It was a big
Yeah.
leap for me.
Yeah. That's great. And what did you were like, "Oh, this is showing me an area of my life that still needs to be healed. There's still grief that needs to be healed." Right?
Exactly. Exactly. So I just wonder, so when we do find that our emotions are significantly activated like that, that is such an indication that there's an area for us to work on, because when we work on that area, it will help a whole bunch of other areas.
That's right. That's right.
Right.
When those bells go off, I'm like, "I dealt with everything."
I know, right? And that's why when you deal with stuff, you lose 9 pounds and you didn't even
That's
realize
right.
it. So
Right.
I know, I love it. Okay. Well, all of my guests have to answer a question at the end. And the question is, Claire, how did you step into your life?
I stepped into my life by learning to drop my attempts at pleasing people, and I broke free from societal expectations and cultural norms and my own limiting beliefs and fears, and completely and utterly accepted myself, quirks and all, faults and all, and loved myself and held myself to a higher standard about who I would interact with. Once I did that, I stepped into my life, my happy
Because
life.
you found your worth.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
love it. Thank you for sharing that. Now, Claire, how can people find you if they would like to work with you?
If they'd like to work with me, they can go to claireunkerfer.com and connect with me there. You can also connect with me on Instagram. I'm very active on Instagram. My handle is at claire.unkerfer. And feel free to shoot me a DM and chat with me, ask me any questions. That's how you can find
Well,
me.
I'm pushing that follow button today. I can tell you right now.
Thank you.
So I really appreciate you coming on and talking about depression and anxiety and all those buried feelings. It's really important. And I think that our world is so stressful right now that we have to learn how to deal with all the stuff that's floating about us, because we deserve to be happy. We
Yeah.
deserve to have a good life. We were not put on this planet to live miserable. So, thank you for giving us one more way that we can work through the things that happen to us in our life, because they will, that will allow us to transform into a better place.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me on.
It was truly my pleasure. I've learned a lot today. So everyone, please, again, thank you, Claire. Watch the following, this episode and all the other ones on the channel, on Phoenix TV or YouTube, or on the podcast, as we journey together through making this the best life we can. Thank you.
Thank you.